You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. And so the reason that you can't give, that you can't provide support, you can't care, it's because you need to care for you. And you are in need of support and love and maybe of receiving. And it's really hard to do. In fact, for some of us, it takes getting to that point in order to have your defenses turned off enough that you can receive without pushing it away, without dismissing it. Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia, and if you happen to be new around here, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. I am a self-care specialist as well as a certified astrologer, and I love working with people like you to help you remember that you can be comfortable owning who you truly are, and to help you know that the little changes that you're making, either with how you're thinking about things or how you're approaching problems in your life, can actually lead to really big changes. It can lead to a tremendous impact. And hopefully it doesn't have to be hard or strenuous or stressful. Maybe there is a way we can figure things out so that it can be the easiest way possible and aligning with what really works for you. That is what I am truly passionate about, and so much of what lies at the heart of this podcast. And how I do that is I share a little bit from within, what I'm working on, what I'm working through, things that I've been thinking about, and all of the ideas and inspiration that I have that I'm currently working through, whether it's in my personal life or with the clients and people that I'm sharing connection with. So all of that said, today is the day after Christmas that I'm recording this. I'm recording this on Monday the 26th. To be honest, it's a little bit later in the evening, and what a day it was. I'm sure you can hear it a little bit in my voice, but I am still kind of recovering from a pretty bad cold that I had last week. It was not COVID, and it was pretty stressful, but I am feeling a lot better. I was able to slow down enough when I was feeling sick last week to take care of myself. And you know, I didn't touch on this a lot last week, but I think it's worth mentioning that when we get sick, it really does take a tremendous amount of bandwidth, like physical energy, mental energy, and emotional energy to take care of ourselves. And it's strange because you'd think that having the inner resources to take care of yourself when you're sick, that would come easily or it would come naturally. And the truth is that it doesn't. I think it helps when you have a really strong sense of motivation for feeling better. It helps you make all of those decisions that can align with supporting your health. And sometimes it works and then sometimes it doesn't. Personally, last week when I got sick, I woke up sick on Sunday morning with a really deep chest cold. I was extremely motivated to kick that crud because I did not want to spread it to my partner, who's been dealing with a series of health issues for the past year and a half. And then 2, I wanted to be better before Christmas. My sister came into town for the holidays, and I wanted to be better before she flew in, and I wanted to be able to participate with Christmas and, you know, all of those things. And so as soon as those symptoms showed up in my body, I mean, I was on the couch. I was just drinking like tea and water every second of the day. I never let my cup get empty or just sit there not being drinking. Like I was committed to the fluids. I was committed to my vitamins. I was on cough syrup. I made a telehealth appointment. Like I was all over doing whatever I could to get better. The only thing I felt like I really did not do that probably would have helped is just actually sleep. I mean, I was sleeping at night, but I'm not a really good napper. So that part didn't really work as far as, you know, all the tips and tricks that you do. But I did rest, and I will say that the first probably 48 hours, I was like, this is what I need to do. I need to rest. I need to take care of myself. I need to do all these things. And then you hit this point where it doesn't matter how bad you're feeling. You just start to feel like you just don't have the capacity to let yourself continue to be in the resting zone. And I don't know if this is maybe some people are more prone to this than others. I know that a lot of women specifically feel this way, where it's just like, I don't have the space to be down anymore. Like, have people in my life or animals in my life that I have to take care of. Like, it doesn't matter whether it is your immediate family or your extended family or the people that you work with. For whatever reason, so many of us take so much responsibility for the way that we function inside the lives of others. We don't give ourselves the space to be down for very long. And so that was something that I definitely felt I started to struggle with. And that's why I'm bringing it up today, because I think that as all of this stuff is going around, whether it's RSV or the flu or COVID or colds or just any kind of health stuff that you can imagine, let's even talk about burnout in this category. It is really difficult to stay present in your healing process and not shortchange yourself because you have set some sort of timeline or timer on your allotted amount of rest. And that timer runs up and suddenly, even it doesn't matter if you're actually feeling better or not, you've just grown impatient with the process and you keep moving forward as though it didn't happen or that you used up all of your time to rest. We have to take a moment to laugh, even if it's a little bit of laughing at ourselves, because this is such a common thing. And I know that there are those of you who are listening who are picturing yourself maybe one day out from a really bad cold that are like, okay, I was totally getting ready to do this. I'm going to just power through my work day, or I'm going to do all of my normal things. Just if you fake it till you make it, that kind of thing. And then there's others of you who are maybe in that week out period or even a month out period, still recovering from something really big that you moved through, and kind of maybe having that moment of self-reflection, giggling a little bit at yourself, realizing, yeah, you're not totally back to 100%. And it's really hard to keep making all of those decisions to take care of yourself or to even just take dedicated space for yourself that you're used to giving to other people so that you have those resources to take care of yourself. This is so challenging. And that's why I wanted to take a minute to talk about this. And this absolutely is going to partner very well with the entire theme of today's episode, which has to do with giving. And what does giving look like when you feel like you have nothing to give? When you feel like you've run out of resources. And I think this specific category that we're talking about with being sick, this is what it feels like. You're like, you don't have the energy to go to your medicine cabinet to take the cough syrup, so you stay up coughing all night, or you don't have the ability to, whatever it takes to get yourself to that place where you can suck down all of your big bottle of water, right? Like, I've been there before in both of those scenarios, and it's different every single time. Sometimes, like I said, you have that motivation where you're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to be every 4 hours setting a timer for my medicine and taking these vitamins and doing this and that, and 20-minute shower and this therapy and that therapy. Sometimes you have that. And other times it's just totally different, where it's like, whether it's you physically do not have the energy to get up. Maybe if somebody else brought it to you, maybe you have that person, maybe you don't. Maybe it is the emotional capacity. It's like, for whatever reason, the sickness came at the exact worst time. For my boyfriend, Dave, he ended up getting this stupid cold, and it sucked. I really thought that he was going to be able to miss it, but he ended up getting it. And for him, and I'm not speaking for him, but I would say that knowing what he's experienced health-wise for the past year and a half, and then getting a cold on top of it, like, he did not have the same motivation to take all of the vitamins and do all of the things. He had to approach it in his own way, and his emotional capacity to deal with it was different, especially because it was so emotionally devastating for him to have gotten sick with it. And so it was a very different experience for him this go around. And I think every single one of us, with this experience, we can think about in our own lives, especially with those closest to us, when something kind of travels through our house, it kind of can be even more frustrating because each one of us deals with it very differently. There's that old stereotype of, how men are when they get sick, and they need all of the resources to help take care of them. Meanwhile, like, the women get the same thing and they're not complaining and still taking the dog outside and doing all of those things. And I don't necessarily want to reinforce that stereotype for any other reason than just to say that everybody is different and people are different. And I think it's worth remembering that for wherever you are, whether you might be recovering from something right now, or maybe you keep this in mind, you plant it, put it in your pocket for down the road if you should come into contact with something, that you have to remember to meet it for what it is in your life at this moment. Because each time we meet ourselves through an experience, it is unique to that experience, right? We're not always the same. We don't always have the same amount of energy or resources or time or stress that is getting us through each different circumstance. And that's why it's all different. But I will say, I do have a couple of suggestions for you when you are in recovery mode. And I will add this on as well. If you have recently been sick or gone through something, even if it's been in the last year, take a moment now, if you have not already done this, maybe write it in a journal that you keep or in a notes app in your phone. Like, that's what I tend to do because I can search for it and find it at any moment. And write down what you wished that you would have given yourself now that you're on the other side. Because I will tell you, in this moment, hindsight will be your best friend. When you are in the middle of being, going through something, it is very hard to see all of the things that you wish you could give yourself because you have all of that pressure coming in on you. I need to bounce back. I need to feel better. I need to do this. I need to take care of this. I need to just be back to 100%. And so you push yourself. But 9 times out of 10, most people, when reflecting back, would say, I wish I had just slept more. I wish I had just laid down and watched movies. I wish I would have taken longer baths. I wish I would, there's whatever it is. But most of the time it has to do with less bouncing back and more dedicated self-care. So let your ability to look back and know what you wish you would have given yourself. Write that down. Write it so clear so that when you start to feel sick in the future, you can go, boom, right back to that list and you can see it in your own handwriting. You can remember this moment of reflecting saying, oh, you're right. I could have given myself that thing. And maybe in that, there's a little bit more permission. Maybe it makes it a little bit more tangible. And hopefully you will be able to find a way to loosen that pressure, or just remember that all of that will be able to be there for you, that it will be okay, that you can take the time that you need. Do whatever you can to try to reinforce that and give it to yourself. Because for whatever reason, rest is not one of those things that we feel generous with. And Even if you've had some time since you were last sick, if you are just honestly still not feeling 100%, I hope that you don't feel like, oh, well, you missed your window to give yourself the rest or the hydration or the nourishing food or the self-care that you need right now, that you still deserve, even though you have been feeling better. So carve out some time to go to bed early. Get something off of your list. It doesn't matter if you need to rearrange your schedule a little bit or make other accommodations, like walk around in your robe, drink a really big cup of tea, slow down, and remember, you don't have to. The word bounce back keeps coming up for me. It's just that idea of like, oh, well, you're better now. And again, I know how hard this is because I just went through it. I really, really was so motivated to feel better. And I pushed myself. I picked my sister up from the airport on Friday, and it was just go, go, go. Trying to get the house ready for the holidays, trying to get ready for all of the plans that we had all made together. And even in the ways that we kind of scaled back on Christmas this year, it was still so much energy, so much effort. And even though I swear, like last Thursday, I was feeling back to like 98%. I was feeling so much better than I had felt previously. And yet today, after 3 days of go, 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 I noticed that, little bit of cough coming back, just run down, maybe just like a little tiny bit of a sinus headache. And those are just the reminders that I probably pushed myself past that fully limit, or that the work that I had been doing was really paying off. But that doesn't just mean that I'm, back to 100%. Even a couple days of busyness, even if I hadn't been sick, it can still wear you out and run you down. And you are allowed to pay attention to that. And you are allowed to honor that the best that you can. In fact, you deserve to. So before you start putting everybody else back towards the front of your list, I hope you take a moment this year before we get towards New Year, before we, switch over into all of the craziness that comes with brand new year, post-holidays, that you just take that nice deep breath and you just give yourself permission to take care of you, to make yourself a priority. Now, let's switch gears just for a minute here to talk a little bit. We'll pause and do our astro check-in. What is going on astrologically this week, and how might knowing what's going on with the astrology help us in our pursuit with our self-care and all of that? This week is an interesting one because we have Mercury stationing retrograde. And, as I look at really what's happening astrologically right now, last week, the sun moved from Sagittarius into Capricorn. It's joining Venus there and Mercury there. They've been there since the beginning of December. And then we have the planet Mars, which has been in the zodiac sign of Gemini since the end of October. And it's still going to be there for a few more months. This is crazy. We do not normally have Mars in the same sign for so long. And now that Mercury, it goes retrograde at the end of this week, it's spending an extra long time in the sign of Capricorn. And so as I look at these placements, there's just this feeling of stagnation. Like things are not really changing as quickly as we're used to. Yes, things do change and things evolve, but at the same time, like we're used to things kind of clipping along here. A lot of variety, a lot of different angles, interactions, all of that. And we're not getting that same thing right now. In fact, especially in the areas that we feel our motivation, our passion, our drive, we are not going through those changes. In fact, we're feeling a lot of that stuff kind of getting frustratingly kind of repressed. And now that we have Mercury, how our mind works and how our thoughts are kind of governed, also about ready to go backwards as well. you kind of have to prepare yourself to slow down. Now, I've been talking a lot about this over the last 2 weeks, and if you really want to deep dive specifically on how to frame all of this in your mind ahead of New Year's, check out the episode from 2 weeks ago on New Year's misconceptions, because we talk a lot about many different ideas to keep the approach of New Year's specifically and New Year's resolutions and manifestations and everything a little bit different in your mind. And so let this just be a little bit of a reminder that this year is not going to get off to the same kind of big bang, fresh start, fresh intentions, all of that stuff that we're used to. And that is okay. In fact, you might be thinking back to the Christmas that you just had and thinking, for whatever reason, like that just didn't quite feel like our normal Christmas celebration. There's a pulse in the air right now that's just, it's not bad. It's just a little bit slow, a little bit repressed. And it's enough to make us feel uncomfortable, to feel like something is off and maybe even begin to question, like, is it us? Are we doing something? Is there something we should be maybe like alert of or a little bit more prepared for? Just some way that we could have control over this and actually shift and move things forward. And the truth is, that's probably just not going to happen with what's happening astrologically right now for the next few weeks. We've got probably the next 3 weeks. I bet you that by actually like January 12th, that's the day that Mars is going to transition direct. We're going to feel a shift. And then about a week later, January 18th is when Mercury will be direct. And by then, I think we're going to feel like a lot of green light feelings, like, okay, things are moving now. Like I've got my passion, I've got my energy, I've got my direction, I've got my motivation. The sun's going to be moving into the sign of Aquarius by January 20th. So things are really going to start to get moving and it's going to feel good. Now, does that mean you just kind of crawl into a hole right now? No. I could see why you might want to. But similarly to how I was just saying, a lot of times when things aren't moving forward, all we want to do is move them forward. And then things start going forward and you look back and you're like, oh, I wish I would have just rested. Or I wish I would have just, took more time to take care of myself or did this or did that when things were slower. This is your opportunity to do that outside of just taking care of yourself. You can give yourself that permission that if things aren't moving fast, if there's not a plan for everything, what if that was just okay? What if you just use this time to look around and say, okay, universe, if there's extra information that I need right now, give it to me. If there's pieces to these puzzles that I'm solving that I just need a little bit of extra help, or if you can turn the pieces for me a little, just do that. Like whatever needs to be done to help support you, even if that means that you just get to take care of yourself. Again, giving yourself back to that permission. What if you taking better care of yourself right now is actually going to be what's needed to come, end of January, move things forward? Because if you are operating at the best version of yourself, if you've been eating really good foods and you're starting to feel a lot better and there's energy happening and your needs are being met and you know what those needs are because you took the time and you gave yourself the time to figure it out, that is the key. That is how you get yourself to the place for those green lights for you to actually be able to go. Whew. So now that I got you kind of more motivated and thinking about all of this a little bit differently, let's take a quick break and we're going to come back and pull on this thread of what it feels like to have something to give. When I sat down to record today's episode, I honestly did not know exactly what I was going to talk about. I just knew that between last night and today, I just came back again and again to this feeling that I have nothing left to give right now. And I've been, if I'm being honest, feeling a little bit sad about that because I have high expectations of myself that I always have to be in a position where I have something to give, whether that is something that I'm creating or something that I'm offering or something that I'm sharing. And to be honest, like all month long, my capacity to give has been lower than I like or that I expect out of myself, which is why I've been feeling kind of disappointed in myself because I do have those kind of big expectations. And I don't know about you, but one of the things that I've noticed myself doing when I contemplate this is I find myself beating myself up a little bit and thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I broken? Am I just out of alignment? Is there something going wrong with me? Is it going to be this way forever? I think that is the thing that I get so afraid of when I start to feel like I have nothing to give, is that it's just like I can't get filled back up again with motivation to give to other people. Like I'm just so scared that it's like a finite resource and I'm running into the bottom of the barrel. And I can say that with a little bit of a laugh right now because very strongly inside of me, even as I share that fear out loud, I feel a very strong conviction on the inside that's like, of course it is not a finite resource. Of course you can find that creativity, that juice, that ability to care and to have something to give and to have something to share. Of course you're going to have that again. Although I will say I was not feeling that way until I started to admit that and talk about this fear out loud. And so this is what I wanted to talk about today is what do you do when you have nothing to give? How do you cope with that? How do you manage it? Because I swear, you guys, I think there are many of us, I don't know if it's you in this moment, but there are many people, especially if you look around you, that especially post-holidays, especially after getting through the kind of 4 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, that many of us are really feeling like, what the hell do I have to give right now? So let's pause for a moment and remember that if you look up the definition of the word giving, that it's an adjective that means providing love or emotional support. Another word for giving is caring. And I kind of like this addition, this adding the word caring in with that idea inside of us of like, I've got nothing left to give. I can't give anymore. It's almost like you have to ask yourself, well, do you have any capacity to care? And I think we all know what that's like when we hit that point where we definitely have nothing left to give. And what absolutely comes with that is we've completely lost our ability to care. In fact, thinking of the times in my life, in my body, when I am most burnt out, and for me, usually that the mental burnout comes first. I can picture myself at the end of like an 8-hour wedding day where my brain just has nothing left to give. I can't compute anymore. And if I were, being asked a question by a team member or something like, oh, should we do this way or that way? At the very end of that day when my brain isn't working anymore, I probably would not have a preference as to how we did or executed something creatively because I don't have the ability to care anymore. Now, this is just an example that I think helps me put into words what I think a lot of us feel when we hit that point of burnout, because we lose our ability to care anymore. We can all picture a caretaker in our lives hitting that moment where maybe it's those days where everything that can go wrong does go wrong, or maybe they're coming off of a sickness or something else, and you just know if you ask them that question, yes or no, they're just going to say, whatever, I just don't care. And to be honest, when you're on the other side of that question, you're like, okay, well, whatever, you keep going on. But for the person who is in that moment, when you feel like you are that person who's hit that point where you have nothing left to give and you just don't care anymore, it is a pretty devastating place to be. And it's an interesting place to be because at that moment, you also find a very deep and a very real sense of surrender. It's like, okay, I've reached the point where I cannot control anything that's coming my way. I can't predict anything that's coming my way. And because of that, just keep letting anything just keep piling up, because I have gone into a different mode and we're just going to have to deal with it all another day. And it doesn't matter if it gets worse or if it gets better or if it changes. It doesn't matter, because I literally do not have 1 ounce inside of me to control any of this, to help, to care for it, to provide it with any ounce of support. I have nothing left to give. And even though there is a small part of me that admires that sense of resiliency that really is kind of secretly packaged in that statement, there's a sense of resiliency, whether you know it or not, that is kind of gift wrapped around all of that surrender. And I like that piece of it, because I do think there is something magical that can happen when you hit that moment. It's almost like if you've got little ones around, cover their ears, but it's kind of like that fuck it moment. And there are benefits to getting to that place. But the truth is, for whatever reason, and I'm not putting blame on this, I'm not evaluating, I'm not saying if you've gotten here that this is your fault. I'm just saying that for whatever reason that you have found yourself in that moment where you don't give anymore, that it usually means that somewhere along the way, some moment that you needed to be taken care of didn't happen. And so the reason that you can't give, that you can't provide support, you can't care, it's because you need to care for you, and you are in need of support and love and maybe of receiving. And it's really hard to do. In fact, for some of us, it takes getting to that point in order to have your defenses turned off enough that you can receive without pushing it away, without dismissing it. And some of us are, we have that receiving rejection built in so strong to us that we'll even do it when we are feeling that level of nothing left to give, of tired, of burnt out. But most of us will not even realize that we are in need of receiving, and will just naturally start receiving, or the people around us will just have no idea what to do with us. So they'll start filling in the gaps that we aren't able to. Probably not the way that we would want them to, but they will do it. In fact, you see this with kids all the time, that when their parents don't have the ability to show up and give to them, that they will step into those roles themselves and start either taking care of themselves, taking care of their siblings, or even starting to caretake for the parents. And that may not be the worst thing in the world short term, right? It does teach resiliency and strength and resourcefulness, even compassion. But long term, that's not a place we want for our kids. And to be honest, it's not what we want for ourselves either. Whether it's us that we're talking about, being in that place of deficiency with giving or caring, but also those around us. It doesn't matter if you're thinking of your parent or your partner, your spouse, or your best friends. Like, we need a give and take in our lives. We need to be able to care for other people, and we need to be part of being taken care of. And so when you have somebody that you love in your life who is not able to function in that way, it is very, very difficult. And it's difficult to be that person as well. And yet, we've all been there. Some of us are there a little bit more often than other people. Now, I will say that for me, as I reflect back to when I started this segment, he's saying, like, I've been a little bit afraid that I don't have anything left to give. I know that I'm not quite in that place of despair because I've got a ton of caring that is happening inside of my heart. And so I know that I'm not quite fully there. But if I look at a pattern that has emerged over the past few years, it is that I get to this point in the year, I get to about mid-November, and there's something that just kind of does click off for me, where I do feel like I kind of enter a little bit of a hibernation mode, where things really have been slowing down inside of my mind, and I am not as creative, and I'm not feeling as able to create content or ideas or just give the same way that I normally do. And even though that scares me in the moment, again, if I look back at the facts, it has been pretty cyclical that I hit this point of the year, and I have to ask myself, is this something that is happening with, nature? Is it something that's happening with my vitamin D levels? Is it something that is happening in my body? Or could it be something that happens in my environment? And I do think that for me, this is the time of year where I usually, having run a seasonal business for so long, where I actually kind of, I guess, so to speak, like can crash, because I have such high expectations of myself to perform during the peak season of fall and summer. And so that's a place that I have to look, and I have to ask myself, okay, is this part of a cycle that I can make room for? Or is it something that I need and want to be more mindful of and maybe do differently in the future? And for me, this is an area where I feel very strongly that I need to start looking at this specific habit, because I don't want to feel like this every time the holidays come around. And I think for me, one thing I've been really trying to do and educate people on, or at least share this message, is that we do have the ability to look at the cycles in our life and change them. And they may not change immediately, right? I'm not going to get a chance to practice, Christmas burnout levels again until next year. But I can be mindful of creating different cycles in my life, and I can choose to have that intention and to make different moves towards it. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I welcome you, whether you are thinking of how you take care of yourself when you get sick, or whether you're thinking of a different cycle, maybe it's not your entire being, but maybe there's one area of your life that you're feeling that fuck it moment. Give yourself permission to examine it realistically with a kind of cold, hard gaze. What are the facts? What leads you to this point? What kind of communication can you do about where this brings you? What kind of support do you need? What kind of resources would help prop you up? Is there anything you can do differently? Feel free to really strategize it from a really new lens, a creative perspective, and try to keep fear out the door, because our fears are so much of what keep us stuck. There's no way out of this. This has to be this way. Nobody else is going to change. Those kind of limiting beliefs are fear-based. Get that stuff out of the equation. Brainstorm it from a outside lens and see if there are things that you can switch up in your life. If you really have had that moment where you're like, yeah, I think I could be done with this. Even just giving a little bit of mental bandwidth, emotional bandwidth to this question, it will absolutely help. This is where, when we look at our lives and our personal transformation, that it's so easy to feel like little moments don't add up to big things, but I promise you that they do. Even little brainstorming sessions like this can lead to really big results changing in your life. And now listen, I cannot promise you that you won't feel burnt out ever again. I can't promise you that you won't have a moment where you feel like you have nothing left to give. But what I can reassure you is that if and when you hit that moment, it is absolutely a moment that has an opportunity embedded into it. An opportunity to do something different, whether it is to simply receive. You've hit that moment where you have nothing left to give. Obviously, that means that you've been giving. Well, it's time to receive. Not comfortable receiving? Well, guess what? Then you've got the opportunity to practice receiving. That's one thing. The next thing is that when you hit that moment, it's an opportunity for maybe somebody else to step up, or for you to get something off your plate that's been draining you for a long time, that you're ready, and that maybe those around you are ready, like it or not, to evolve with and do things differently. These are moments, even though it might be difficult, even though it might be challenging, for us to remember that possibly this is happening for a reason. And again, like I said, there's a resiliency gift wrapped in each of these moments. Now, all of that said, I do think it's very important just to pause for a moment and give permission that none of this has to be brainstormed right away, right? It's not I'm feeling like absolute crap right now. I have nothing left to give. Now's the moment I brainstorm this all. No, when you really, really hit that moment, one of the best things that you can give yourself when you have nothing left to give is sleep. Even if you can't actually turn off your mind, go get into your bed. Pull up those covers, give yourself comfort, wear a comfy robe, get your comfy socks on. Give yourself comfort, give yourself a rest. That is the first and one of the most important first ways that we can start to recharge. And then after that, once you start feeling that capacity come back, might take a while, but once you start feeling that capacity come back, then you can start figuring out, maybe it's a slow thing. Maybe you just write down a couple thoughts in a journal. Maybe you start brainstorming it with a trusted friend. And then once you start feeling like you can look at it clearly, instead of just forgetting about it, that's when you take that opportunity to look and say, is there a way we could have done things differently? Have the courage to do that. It does take courage. But again, a little bit of intention can go a very, very long way. All right, before I start repeating myself again and again, I think this is a good place to end today's episode. Every week we end with a card drawing, so let's do that now. This year, the Kim Krans book, The Animal Spirit Guidebook, has been such a big hit with all of our listeners. So that's the deck we're going to use today. Let's see what animal kind of comes up for us today. and how the universe wants to participate in today's conversation. While I was just talking and shuffling, the Tiger card is the one that popped up. This is a fire card. It represents lunar force, ease in darkness, and feminine energy. It says the tiger hunts at night, at one with the silence, fearing nothing. This card reminds us to take in the wild darkness, to allow the lunar forces to soothe and heal our spirits. Sensuality, receptivity, and devotion are all heightened in the midnight hour. And the tiger takes advantage of these boons. Spend some time in silence this evening, drinking in the potent calm. There is nothing to fear in the stillness except the awakening of our own power. What a beautiful card to help us really harness this transition into the state of darkness, into winter, into some of those tougher times that stillness is what is required of us. And in so many ways, this work that we've been talking about today, it is work that is done in stillness. When you have nothing left to give, what usually happens to you is you become still and your life gets still. And in that stillness comes clarity and receptivity and creativity and inspiration. It doesn't automatically come, the instant you become still. But some stuff does. And sometimes it's a period of stillness that lead us to our greatest awakenings. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today and every single week. If you're not already subscribing, I hope that you do and that you tune in wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like and prefer to listen to this on Patreon, this is the place you can listen ad-free. Join our community. And especially if you're looking for some real self-care support, we have such an incredible community over on Patreon at A Bit From Within. And I know that this community is filled with people who are doing that work of self-care, that are living with intentions in a very realistic way. It is not all fluff. It is not perfection. It is real work. And for me, being a part of that community and kind of heading up and spearheading that group of people that are doing this work and providing space for conversation and ideas, it is truly important to me. And it is work that I'm very grateful for and a community that I am endlessly thankful for. And I will say, as we enter this post-holiday, post-Christmas week, we move towards New Year, just remember that if this is the year that you're needing a little bit more support with your own vibration, your own sense of who you are, consider getting an astrological reading through me. I do readings all the time, mini readings, full readings, where we can really start to uncover pieces of you that are so important and deserve to be validated. Or if you're looking for just some different kind of tools that you can use all year long, this is a great time to get that 2023 lunar journal, this moon journal that's going to help you understand what is happening every single new moon, every single full moon, and help you kind of process it all. It can be really transformational and fun work. So that's also available. Both of those are available through my website, abitfromwithin.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, and until next time.